This 4-year-old homeless girl finds a wheelchair-bound millionaire being pushed into a grave. But she saw everything and does something that shocks everyone. Let me know what you thought of this story in the comments with a score from 0 to 10. I really want to know if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on you. The July sun beat down hard on the Willow Creek Municipal Cemetery when the desperate screams echoed between the marble headstones. Lily, only 4 years old, dropped the cookies she had found in an offering left on a tombstone and ran toward the sound, her bare feet slipping on the damp grass. What she saw made her stop in her tracks, her small heart pounding in her chest. A man in a dark suit was being violently pushed toward an open grave by a hooded figure. The man was shouting, trying to prop himself up on the wheelchair that had toppled beside the hole, but his legs wouldn't obey his commands. The little girl recognized his face. It was the same gentleman who came to visit a grave near the Ashworth family mausoleum where she slept every night. "Help! Somebody! Help me!" The hoarse voice of Edward Vance, 52, cut through the heavy Virginia afternoon air. His graying hair was slick with the sweat of desperation as he tried to cling to the edges of the grave. The hooded figure seemed determined to finish what they had started, shoving him with growing force. Lily didn't think twice. She ran as fast as she could to where the groundskeepers were working on the other side of the cemetery, shouting in her childlike voice, "Mister! Mister! A bad man is hurting the wheelchair man." Joe, a groundskeeper for 20 years, immediately dropped his shovel when he saw the desperation in the girl's big, dark eyes. He had known Lily for 2 months, ever since she'd appeared in the cemetery with no explanation, surviving on the offerings left by visitors. At first, he'd tried to take her to the authorities, but the girl always managed to run away and return to her refuge in the abandoned Ashworth mausoleum. "Where, little one? Show Mr. Joe," he said, scooping the girl into his arms and running in the direction she pointed. 2 other workers followed him, alerted by the commotion. When they arrived, they found Edward hanging precariously from the edge of the grave, his scratched hands bleeding as he struggled not to fall. The hooded figure had vanished among the tombstones, leaving only the echo of hurried footsteps fading away. The wheelchair lay on its side a few feet away, one wheel still spinning slowly. "My God!" "Mr. Vance!" exclaimed Joe, who knew the businessman from his frequent visits to his mother's grave. With the help of his colleagues, they managed to haul the man back to the surface. "What happened here?" Edward was trembling violently, his blue eyes glazed with terror. Someone tried to kill me," he muttered, looking around as if the attacker were still hiding among the headstones. "They came out of nowhere, pushed my chair over, and started forcing me into the grave." "We didn't see anyone around here, sir," one of the groundskeepers said, helping to right the wheelchair. "Are you sure?" "I saw him," Lily shouted, jumping from Joe's arms. "It was a big man with black clothes on his head. He was pushing the mister into the hole." The adults exchanged doubtful glances. A homeless child with no known family, who could barely form complete sentences. Could her testimony be trusted? Joe shook his head, thinking of the fanciful stories children often invented. "Little one, are you sure about what you saw?" he asked gently, as he helped Edward transfer back into his chair. "Wasn't it just your imagination?" "I saw him. He was right here," Lily insisted, pointing to the grave. "He said mean things to the mister." Edward looked closely at the little girl for the first time. Her curly hair was disheveled, her clothes were dirty and tattered, but in her eyes there was a seriousness that didn't match her age. "What else did you see, child?" "He had something shiny in his hand," Lily said, making a motion of holding something, "and he said that you wouldn't be a problem anymore." A chill ran down Edward's spine. The girl had just repeated the exact words the attacker had whispered in his ear before starting to push him. How could she know that if she hadn't truly witnessed it all? Mr. Vance, do you want us to call the police? Joe asked, still suspicious of the story. No, Edward answered quickly, surprising everyone. His mind was racing. If he called the authorities, he'd have to explain what he was doing alone in the cemetery at an hour he was normally working. He'd have to talk about the financial problems he'd been facing, about the lost contracts, about the suspicions he was beginning to have about people close to him. It was a misunderstanding, maybe someone trying to rob me. But, sir, if someone tried to hurt you, Joe insisted. I said no, Edward cut in, sharper than he intended. Just help me get out of here. While the men argued, Lily approached the wheelchair and gently touched Edward's hand. You're hurt, she said, noticing the bloody scratches on his arms. Want me to blow on it? My mommy used to say blowing on it makes the pain go away. For the first time in years, Edward felt his eyes well up with tears, not from the physical pain, but from that simple show of care from a child who clearly had no one to care for her. What's your name, little one? Lily. Lily, do you live here in the cemetery? The girl looked down, ashamed. I live over there. She pointed to the old mausoleum, where she had fashioned a sort of bed from wilted flowers and papers found around the grounds. The revelation hit Edward like a punch. A 4-year-old child, all alone, living among graves, surviving on offerings left for the dead, and she had been the only person to try and save him when he needed it most. Mr. Vance, we'll get you to your car, Joe said. And as for the girl, well, we've tried several times, but she always comes back. No, Edward said, surprising them all again. Lily is coming with me. The groundskeepers looked at each other, confused. Sir, she saved my life. It's the least I can do. Edward looked at the girl, who was watching him with a mix of hope and suspicion. Would you like to have a real house, Lily? With a bed, hot food, a bath? The girl's eyes widened. For 2 months she'd lived however she could, drinking water from the staff's spigot, eating leftover food left by visitors, sleeping cold and scared every night. The possibility of having a real home seemed like an impossible dream. But what if the bad man comes back? She asked, looking nervously at her surroundings. You'll be safe in my house, Edward promised, though he himself wasn't sure of that after what had just happened. No one will hurt you. As they left the cemetery, none of them imagined this was just the first of many trials they would face together, nor that Edward's problems were only just beginning. Edward Vance's mansion stood majestically in the affluent part of Willow Creek, its colonial windows reflecting the setting sun as the adapted car drove up the cobblestone driveway. Lily pressed her face against the glass, her eyes wide, at a world she had never imagined existed. Perfectly manicured gardens stretched out on all sides, with crystal-clear fountains and centuries-old trees offering generous shade. Is this where you live? She asked, her small voice filled with awe. It's our home now, Edward corrected gently, watching the girl's reaction. In the 40-minute drive from the cemetery, she had asked dozens of questions, showing a voracious curiosity about everything around her. Her powers of observation had impressed him. She had noticed every detail of the landscape, memorizing street names and businesses with a surprising accuracy for her age. When the car stopped in front of the main entrance, a stout woman of 68 appeared on the porch. Agnes Stone had worked for the Vance family for over 30 years, first as Edward's nanny when he was a child, then as the housekeeper after his mother passed away. Her grey hair was pulled back in a flawless bun, and her floral apron couldn't hide the look of surprise as she saw the dirty, dishevelled child getting out of the vehicle. "Oh, my goodness, Mr. Edward! Who is this child?" Agnes exclaimed, hurrying down the marble steps. Her experienced eyes missed no detail. The torn clothes, the bare feet, the tangled hair. "Where on earth did you find her?" "It's a long story, Agnes," Edward replied. maneuvering his wheelchair toward the side ramp that had been installed years ago. "Lily will be staying with us for a while." The housekeeper frowned, worried. In all her years working for Edward, she had never seen him bring a child home. Since the accident that had left him in a wheelchair 15 years ago, he had become increasingly isolated, focusing all his energy on the coffee processing company he had inherited from his father. "Sir, don't you think you should talk to Child Protective Services first? A child needs documents, Agnes stopped mid-sentence when she saw Edward's warning look. "We'll talk about that later," he said firmly. "For now, Lily needs a bath, clean clothes, and a hot meal. Can you see to that?" Lily watched the exchange between the two adults, her precocious intelligence picking up on the unexpressed tension. She approached Agnes with hesitant steps. "You don't like me?" she asked with the frankness of a child. Agnes's heart tightened. 23 years had passed since she had lost her own daughter Isabel, at the age of 5, to a bout of pneumonia that the medical resources of the time couldn't fight. Since then, an immense void had taken over her life, filled only by her dedication to her work and to caring for Edward. "It's not that, dear," she said, kneeling to be at the girl's level. "It's just a surprise. It's been a long time since we've had a child in this house." She gently touched Lily's dirty face. "Are you hungry?" Lily's eyes filled with tears of relief. "Very," she admitted. "Today, all I ate was some shortbread cookies I found on a grave." "My God," Agnes whispered, looking at Edward with an expression that mixed compassion and disapproval. "Come on, let's get you a nice warm bath and then a real dinner." As Agnes led Lily upstairs to one of the guest rooms, Edward went to his office. The mahogany-paneled walls displayed diplomas, photographs of the family business, and awards for excellence in agribusiness. But lately, the room that once filled him with pride was becoming a constant reminder of his growing problems. He turned on the computer and opened the financial reports he'd been avoiding. The numbers confirmed his worst fears. In the last 6 months, Vance & Son had lost 3 of its biggest contracts to Southern Harvest Coffee, a smaller company that had appeared out of nowhere, offering impossibly low prices. How could they work with such low margins and still maintain quality? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of laughter coming from the upper floor. It had been years since that house had heard the sound of childish joy. He took the specially installed elevator for his chair and found Lily in the bathtub, playing with rubber ducks that Agnes had found in a long-forgotten closet. "Look, Mr. Edward, the water gets all colourful with the soap," the girl exclaimed, making foam with her small hands. Her hair, now washed, revealed natural golden curls that contrasted with her expressive brown eyes. "She has an incredible memory," Agnes commented in a low voice, arranging clothes she had improvised from old pieces. "She told me details about the cemetery that gave me chills. She knows the names of people buried there, knows where the oldest tombs are, remembers conversations she overheard between visitors." Edward nodded thoughtfully. During the drive to the mansion, Lily had shown a capacity for observation and memorization that bordered on the extraordinary. Maybe that was exactly what he needed, a witness with a perfect memory of what had happened that afternoon. "Mr. Edward," Lily called from the tub, "can I ask a question?" "Of course. Why did the bad man want to hurt you?" The innocent question hit Edward like a stone. "I don't know, little one. Sometimes bad people do things for no reason." "That's not true," she said with surprising seriousness. "He said your name. He knew you." Agnes turned, alarmed. "What do you mean, dear?" "Before he pushed Mr. Edward, he said, 'Thought you could get away, Vance?' And he also talked about money." A heavy silence fell in the bathroom. Edward felt the blood run cold in his veins. The girl had just revealed details that confirmed his worst suspicions. The attack wasn't random. Someone wanted to see him eliminated, and they had specific reasons for it. "Lily," he said carefully, "could you draw what that man looked like?" "I can. I remember everything. His size, the color of his clothes, even what he smelled like. He smelled like cigarettes and beer." She got out of the tub and wrapped herself in the towel Agnes offered her. "Can I draw now?" Half an hour later, the three of them gathered in the dining room. Lily, now dressed in an improvised nightgown of Agnes's, devoured a plate of chicken, rice and beans as if it were her first meal in weeks, which it probably was. Beside her plate, several sheets of paper showed surprisingly detailed drawings for a 4-year-old. "Here," she said, pointing to a robust male figure. "He was like this, very big, broad shoulders, and he wore a hoodie, but I saw his face when he bent down." Agnes picked up the drawing with trembling hands. Her face turned pale instantly, and she dropped the paper as if it had burned her fingers. "Agnes, what is it?" Edward asked, alarmed. "This man, I know this man," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "It's Otis, my ex-husband." The revelation exploded in the room like a bomb. Edward leaned forward in his chair, incredulous. "Your ex-husband? But you said he disappeared years ago." "He did disappear, 8 years ago, after he stole all my savings and ran off with a younger woman." Agnes picked up the drawing again, her hands shaking. "But it's him, I'm sure of it. Those small eyes, the scar on his chin." Lily looked from one to the other, sensing the tension her revelation had caused. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked in her small voice. "No, dear," Edward said, forcing a reassuring smile. "You were very brave and smart. Thanks to you, now we know who tried to hurt me." But internally, his mind was churning with disturbing questions. Why would Agnes's ex-husband try to kill him? What was the connection between a man who had disappeared years ago and his current business problems, and most importantly, who had hired Otis for that sinister task? "Mr. Edward," Agnes said, regaining her composure, "you need to call the police. If Otis is involved in this, he might try again." "Not yet," he replied, watching Lily finish her meal. "First, I need to understand what's happening better. Agnes, tell me everything about your ex-husband, everything." As the housekeeper recounted the painful story of her failed marriage, none of them noticed the shadow moving outside the dining room window, carefully watching every movement inside the lit house. 3 weeks had passed since Lily arrived at the mansion, and the household routine had completely changed. The girl woke up every day at 6 in the morning, ran through the hallways with boundless energy, and had transformed the solemn atmosphere into a symphony of laughter and discovery. Agnes had found a renewed purpose, caring for the little one with the maternal affection that had been dormant for decades. "Mr. Edward, did you know there's a bird building a nest in your window?" Lily asked during breakfast, her eyes shining with curiosity. "It has 3 little babies, and the mommy brings them worms 5 times a day." "How do you know it's 5 times?" he asked, impressed by the girl's level of observation. "Because I count. I also know the mailman always arrives at 10:30. The lady who sells bread comes by at 3 in the afternoon, and there's a black car that stays parked on the corner every Tuesday and Thursday." Edward paused with his coffee cup in midair. "What black car?" "A big one with dark windows. The man inside wears glasses and just stares at our house," Lily explained naturally, spreading jam on her toast. "I thought he was your friend." Edward's blood ran cold. For 3 weeks, he'd felt like he was being watched, but he had attributed the feeling to post-traumatic paranoia. Discovering that there was actually someone surveilling the house confirmed his worst fears. "Agnes," he called, trying to keep his voice calm. "Come here, please." The housekeeper appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "What is it, Mr. Edward?" "Lily just told me about a car on the corner watching the house. Have you noticed anything strange lately?" Agnes's face paled. "Actually, yes. Yesterday, when I went to the market, I had the feeling someone was following me. And last week, I found the back gate ajar, even though I always lock it at night." Lily looked from one to the other, sensing the growing concern of the adults. "Did I do something wrong by telling you about the car?" "No, dear," Edward said, stroking the girl's curly hair. "In fact, you helped us a lot. How about you go play in your room while Agnes and I talk?" After Lily went upstairs, Edward went to the phone. It was time to take more drastic measures. He dialed a number he had found in an online search days earlier. "Sterling Private Investigations. How can I help you?" "My name is Edward Vance. I need to hire your services. Urgently." 2 hours later, a thin man in his 50s, with greying hair and watchful eyes, was sitting in the mansion's living room. Evan Sterling had been a detective for 20 years before retiring and opening his own investigation firm. His reputation for discretion and efficiency was known throughout the region. "Mr. Vance," Evan said, taking notes in a small pad, "from what I understand, you were attacked in the cemetery 3 weeks ago, and now you suspect you're being watched. Do you have any idea who might want to harm you?" Edward hesitated for a moment. "My company has been facing difficulties. We've lost several major contracts in recent months to a competitor that appeared out of nowhere. Also, we discovered that the man who attacked me is my housekeeper's ex-husband." An interesting coincidence," Evan murmured. "Tell me about these lost contracts." 3 clients who had been with us for over 10 years cancelled their agreements to sign with Southern Harvest Coffee. The strange thing is, they were offering prices 50% below market value. It's impossible to maintain quality at those prices. Unless they have inside information about your processes and suppliers, the investigator observed. "Who has access to that data in your company?" "Only me, my accountant, and my cousin Damien, who is a minority partner." Edward frowned. "Damien has been insisting that I sell my share of the company. He says the market is changing and it would be better to invest in other sectors." Evan noted it down carefully. "I'll investigate this Southern Harvest Coffee, find out who the owners are, how they started. I'll also check the background of your housekeeper's ex-husband. How long do you need for the results?" "As soon as possible. I have a child under my care now, and she could be in danger too." That afternoon, as Evan began his investigations, Damien Vance showed up at the mansion unannounced. Tall and elegant at 45, he had always been Edward's opposite, extroverted where his cousin was reserved, impulsive where Edward was cautious. The accident that had left Edward in a wheelchair had created a distance between them they had never completely bridged. "Edward, what's this I hear about you adopting a street kid?" Damien asked bluntly, walking into the room with an air of disapproval. "The whole town is talking." "I haven't adopted anyone," Edward replied coldly. "I'm just offering temporary help to a child in need." "Temporary?" Damien laughed sarcastically. "From what I hear, you've already enrolled her in a private school and are treating this as permanent. Have you completely lost your mind?" "Watch your words, Damien. Someone needs to tell you the truth. You're going through an emotional crisis after that episode in the cemetery. First, you invent a fantasy story about being attacked. Now you bring a strange child home." Damien approached the wheelchair. "People are questioning your sanity, Edward. It's hurting the company." "What fantasy episode?" Lily's voice echoed from the staircase. The girl had come down silently and was watching the argument with interest. Mr. Edward didn't make anything up. Damien turned, noticing the child for the first time. "And who might you be, little one?" "I'm Lily, and I saw when the bad man tried to hurt Mr. Edward." She came down the rest of the stairs and stood beside the wheelchair, as if protecting Edward. "You don't believe him?" "Child, adults sometimes confuse dreams with reality," Damien said condescendingly. "It's normal at your age." Lily's eyes narrowed. "I didn't dream it. I remember everything." The man had a scar on his chin. He was wearing black sneakers with a white spot on the right one, and he said that Mr. Edward wouldn't get in the way of the plans anymore. "Or do you want me to draw it?" Damien paled slightly but maintained his composure. "Edward, we need to talk alone." "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Lily," Edward replied, intrigued by his cousin's reaction. "Fine." Damien took a deep breath. "I received an offer to buy our shares of the company. It's a generous offer, considering the current situation. I'm not interested in selling." "Edward, be realistic. We're losing contracts, the competition is growing, and now you have extra expenses with this child." Damien gestured nervously. "The offer is for 20 million. We can split it 50-50 and invest in something safer." 20 million? Edward frowned. "The company is worth at least 40 million, even with the current problems. The market is down. It's the best we're going to get." Lily, who had been quietly observing the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "Mr. Edward, this man is lying." Both adults looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean, dear?" asked Edward. "He knows the man who attacked you. When I talked about the scar on his chin and the sneaker, he got scared. Just like grown-ups do when they get caught doing something wrong." Damien forced a laugh. "What a vivid imagination. Edward, you see, this girl is creating more and more elaborate fantasies." But Edward wasn't smiling anymore. He was watching his cousin's body language closely. The sweating hands, the evasive gaze, the way he avoided direct eye contact. Lily, with her exceptional observational skills, had picked up on something he himself was beginning to suspect. "Damien," he said slowly, "how did you know Lily was from the cemetery? I never mentioned where I found her." The silence that followed was deafening. Damien opened and closed his mouth several times, clearly trying to formulate a plausible answer. I heard people talking around town." "What specific comments?" Edward pressed, his voice gaining a dangerous chill. "I don't remember exactly." Damien was now visibly sweating. "Edward, you're being paranoid. This isn't healthy." Lily moved closer to Edward and whispered something in his ear. The businessman's face hardened completely. "Damien," he said in a controlled voice, "I think you should leave, and don't come back here until I contact you. Edward, you're making a mistake. Leave. Now." After Damien left, Edward turned to Lily. "What did you whisper to me?" "I saw the man from the black car talking to him last week. They met at the gas station on Main Avenue," she said matter-of-factly. "I thought it was weird because you said you didn't have any new friends." Edward felt the world spin. His own cousin was involved in the attempt on his life. But why? And how deep did this conspiracy that was forming around him go? That night, he couldn't sleep, watching every suspicious movement from the windows, while Lily slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that her sharp observations had just exposed a betrayal that could destroy everything he knew about his own family. A week after the confrontation with Damien, life in the mansion had taken on a tense, vigilant rhythm. Edward had installed security cameras at all entrances and hired a night watchman, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Lily, for her part, had developed her own surveillance system, memorizing the license plates of suspicious cars and the times of strange movements in the neighborhood. "Mr. Edward," she said during lunch, "the black car changed. Now it's dark blue, but the man is the same. He has a birthmark on his forehead on the left side." Edward almost choked on his food. The girl's observational skills continued to surprise him, but they also worried him. A 4-year-old child shouldn't have to worry about surveillance and security. "Lily, dear," Agnes intervened, serving more rice on the girl's plate, "how about we talk about happier things? Do you want to learn how to make shortbread cookies this afternoon?" "Yes, but first, I need to tell Mr. Edward about the man who came last night," Lily said, her expression turning serious. He was in the backyard, fiddling with something near the kitchen window. Agnes dropped the pot on the floor with a crash. "What man? Why didn't you tell me this before? I thought you knew." He was wearing a uniform like the man who comes to do the gardening, but he was different, taller, and had short hair. Lily continued, eating calmly. "And he wasn't fixing the plants. He was putting a tiny little thing near the window." Edward shot up from his chair, heading for the back of the house. Agnes followed, carrying Lily in her arms. When they reached the area outside the kitchen, Edward carefully examined the window frame until he found a small silver device, almost imperceptible, stuck to the bottom corner. "My God," Agnes murmured. "Is that a microphone?" "Looks like it," Edward confirmed, carefully removing the device. "Someone has been spying on us for who knows how long." Just then, the house phone rang. Edward answered cautiously. "Mr. Vance, this is Evan Sterling. I need to speak with you urgently. I've discovered some very interesting things about your case. Can you come now? I'll be there in 20 minutes. While they waited for the investigator, Edward did a full sweep of the house with a metal detector he had bought online a few days earlier. They found 3 more listening devices. One in his office, another in the living room, and a third in the guest room where Lily slept. "Who would do something like this?" Agnes asked, visibly shaken. "Someone who needs to know our movements to plan their next attack," Edward answered grimly. When Evan arrived, his expression was grave. He sat down in the living room and opened a thick folder. "Mr. Vance, what I've found is worse than we imagined," the investigator began. "First, about Otis Ferreira, Mrs. Stone's ex-husband. He didn't disappear on his own 8 years ago. He was hired by someone to stay away from the city in exchange for a considerable sum of money." Agnes turned pale. "Hired by whom?" "I'm still investigating that, but I can confirm he's been back for 3 months, living on a rural property 40 miles from here, and has been meeting regularly with people connected to Southern Harvest Coffee." Edward leaned forward in his chair. "And what about this competing company?" "That's where things get interesting," Evan said, flipping through documents. "Southern Harvest Coffee was created 8 months ago through a complex network of shell companies. The official owner is a front, but the real controller," he paused dramatically, "is impossible to trace through legal means." "What does that mean?" "It means someone with a lot of money and legal knowledge is behind this. Someone who knows your business inside and out and has access to privileged information." Lily, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. "Can I say something?" "Of course, dear," Edward said. "The day Cousin Damien came here after he left, I saw him on the phone in his car. He said, 'The plan isn't working.' He's smarter than we thought. And he also said, 'We need to speed things up before he finds out everything.'" The silence in the room was absolute. Evan stopped writing and stared at the girl. "Lily, are you absolutely sure what you heard?" he asked. "Yes, I am. I remember all the words. He also said a name, Forrest something." "Forrest?" Evan quickly flipped through his papers. "Forrest Baxter." "Could be. It started with a B." The investigator turned to Edward with an alarmed expression. "Mr. Vance, Forrest Baxter was your company's accountant a few years ago, wasn't he?" "He was, yes. He worked with us for almost 20 years until he was fired for accounting irregularities," Edward confirmed, his voice starting to tremble. "That was 2 years ago. And who fired him?" "I did. I discovered he was embezzling small amounts and falsifying reports." Edward ran his hands over his face. "Damien tried to intercede for him at the time, said they were just administrative errors." "Mr. Vance," Evan said gravely, "I believe your cousin and your ex-accountant are working together to destroy your company and possibly eliminate you physically. But why? Damien is my partner. He would lose money too." "Not if he's already secured a better position in the competing company," the investigator noted, or if he's been promised the entire company after your absence. Agnes covered her mouth in horror. They want to kill Mr. Edward. The attack in the cemetery was just the first attempt, Evan said, and from what the girl has observed, they're speeding up their plans. Just then, the house phone rang again. Edward answered reluctantly. "Cousin, we need to talk urgently," came Damien's voice from the other end. "Something serious has happened at the company." "What kind of serious? I'd rather explain in person. Can I come over now?" Edward looked at Evan, who gave an affirmative nod. "You can come, but bring all the company documents." "Documents? Why?" "Just bring them, Damien." After hanging up, Evan addressed everyone in the room. "I'll hide in the office to observe and record the conversation. Mrs. Stone, take Lily upstairs and keep her away from the windows." "No," Lily said firmly. "I want to stay. I know when adults are lying better than you do." "My dear, it could be dangerous," Agnes tried to argue. "He won't hurt me in front of Mr. Edward, and I might hear things you don't pay attention to," the girl insisted. Edward considered for a moment. Lily's observational skills had been crucial in uncovering Damien's lies the first time. She can stay, but at the first sign of danger, Agnes takes her out of here, he decided. 30 minutes later, Damien arrived at the mansion with a briefcase of documents and a look of concern that seemed genuine. But Lily, watching from the living room, immediately noticed that he checked the backyard before ringing the bell, as if looking for something specific. "Edward," Damien said, sitting heavily on the sofa, "we have a serious problem. Our biggest grain supplier cancelled their contract today, without warning. Why would they do that? They said they received a better offer, an offer that included payment in cash for the entire year's crop." Damien opened his briefcase. "Edward, we don't have the capital to compete with that. The company will go bankrupt in 2 weeks if we can't find other suppliers." Lily watched intently as Damien spoke. Her small hands held a pencil and paper, drawing discreetly. When Damien paused to drink water, she whispered something in Edward's ear. "Damien," Edward said calmly, "how much exactly did this proposal offer the suppliers?" $2.5 million cash." "Interesting," Edward murmured. "And where did you get such detailed information about the competitor's proposal?" Damien hesitated for just a second, but it was long enough for Lily to make more notes. "The supplier's manager told me. He felt sorry for our situation." "How kind of him," Edward said, his voice carrying a dangerous sarcasm. "And I suppose you already have a solution in mind?" "Actually, yes. The purchase offer I mentioned last week is still on the table. If we sell now, we at least save something." Lily suddenly stood up and handed her drawing to Edward. It was a surprisingly detailed depiction of Damien, but with a crucial difference. She had drawn him with 2 faces, one smiling and the other with a cruel expression. "Lily showed me something interesting, cousin," Edward said, showing the drawing. "She has a theory about 2-faced people." Damien's face twitched slightly. "What is this childish game?" "The game of a girl who knows when someone is lying," Edward replied coldly. "Damien, where were you on the afternoon I was attacked in the cemetery?" The question caught Damien off guard. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then forced a nervous laugh. What a strange question. Probably working. Why? "Because," said a deep voice from the office door, "we have evidence that suggests otherwise." Evan emerged from the shadows with a recorder in his hand and a determined expression. Damien shot up abruptly, knocking his coffee cup onto the Persian rug. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" "I'm a private investigator," Evan answered calmly. "And this isn't your house, Mr. Damien Vance. Not yet." The tension in the room was palpable. Damien looked from Evan to Edward like a cornered animal, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to maintain his composure. Lily watched everything with heightened attention, her small fingers still clutching the pencil, ready to capture any detail that might escape the adults. "Private investigator?" Damien tried to laugh, but the sound came out forced. "Edward, you've really lost it. You're hiring spies to watch your own family." "I'm protecting my life," Edward replied coldly. "Something that, it seems, needs to be done even within my own home." Evan stepped forward, pulling an envelope from his folder. "Mr. Vance, would you care to explain these photographs?" The images spread across the coffee table showed Damien in secret meetings with two men. One was clearly Otis, recognizable by the scar on his chin that Lily had drawn. The other was a bald man with glasses whom none of them recognized. "I don't know what you're talking about," Damien muttered, but his eyelids were blinking nervously. "I can meet with whomever I please." "Including the man who tried to kill your cousin?" Evan asked, pointing to a photo where Damien was handing an envelope to Otis. Lily stood up and went to the table, examining the photographs with scientific interest. "Mr. Edward, that's him, the man with the scar." Then she pointed to the bald man. "And I've seen this one before too." "Where, dear?" asked Agnes, who had remained silent until then. "At Mr. Edward's company. He was there last week when we went to get some papers. I remember because he wore a strong perfume that made my nose itch." Edward closed his eyes, feeling the last piece of the puzzle fall into place. Forrest. It was Forrest Baxter. "This is ridiculous," Damien exploded, finally losing his composure. "You're believing a 4-year-old child over me, over your own family?" "A child who saved my life," Edward answered with deadly calm, "and who has a more reliable memory than most adults I know." Evan opened another folder. "Mr. Vance, we also have phone records showing frequent calls between you and numbers registered to shell companies linked to Southern Harvest Coffee." "Phone records? That's an invasion of privacy." "It's a criminal investigation," Evan corrected, "especially when it involves attempted murder and corporate fraud." Damien headed for the door, but stopped when Lily spoke again. "He also has a key to Mr. Edward's house." All eyes turned to the girl. "How do you know that, Lily?" Agnes asked. "Because when he arrived today, he didn't wait for anyone to open the door. He was already putting the key in the lock when Mr. Edward told him to come in." Lily looked at Damien with her big, penetrating eyes. "But Mr. Edward didn't give him a key. I asked Mrs. Agnes yesterday, and she said only she and Mr. Edward have a key." The silence that followed was deafening. Damien was now visibly sweating, his hands opening and closing nervously. "Damien," Edward said in a controlled voice, "empty your pockets. Now." "You can't make me." "Yes, I can. This is my house, and you are my guest. Either you empty your pockets, or I call the police this instant." Reluctantly, Damien began to pull items from his pockets. A wallet, a cell phone, and finally a gold key that was identical to the one Edward used for the front door. "How did you get this key?" Edward asked, his voice filled with pain and betrayal. I had a copy made years ago when you had that pneumonia and were hospitalized. It was for emergencies." "What kind of emergencies require secret entry into my home?" Damien didn't answer, but Lily spoke up again. "Can I tell you something? Last Monday, when you all went to the bank, he came in here. I saw him from my bedroom window. He spent a long time in Mr. Edward's office." Agnes turned to Lily, alarmed. "Why didn't you tell us this before? I thought Mr. Edward knew. I thought they worked together even when Mr. Edward wasn't home." Edward went straight to his office, followed by everyone else. He opened the safe with his personal code and checked the contents. Some documents were in different positions than he remembered, and a folder with important contracts was missing. "My contracts with the grain suppliers," he said, turning to Damien. "You stole them. That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth," Edward shouted, finally losing control. "You stole the contracts, passed the information to the competition, hired that thug to kill me." And now you're trying to force me to sell the company for a pittance." Damien recoiled, but something in his expression changed. The mask of innocence finally fell, revealing a calculating coldness that no one had seen before. "You always thought you were better than me," he said in a low, dangerous voice. "The smart cousin, the natural heir to the company, Uncle Albert's favorite. Even after the accident, even in a wheelchair, you were still the owner of everything. Damien, 15 years I waited, 15 years thinking you would give me a real chance to run the company. But no, I was always just the minority partner, the cousin who helps but never decides." Damien laughed bitterly. "Until I realized I could take it all for myself." "So it's true," Agnes murmured, horrified. "You really want to kill Edward?" "Kill is a strong word," Damien said coldly. "I prefer remove the obstacle, and it would have worked perfectly if it weren't for this damned child." Lily hid behind Edward, finally understanding she was in the presence of someone truly dangerous. "The plan was simple," Damien continued, now completely open about his intentions. "Otis would make you have an accident at the cemetery. I would take over the company as the sole surviving partner, sell everything to Southern Harvest Coffee for a fair price, and pocket the $40 million the company is actually worth." "And Southern Harvest Coffee? It's mine, obviously, created through Forrest with money I've been siphoning from our company for 2 years. Damien smiled coldly. "The same money you thought he was stealing for personal use." Evan was discreetly recording everything as he positioned himself between Damien and the door. "Mr. Vance, you are confessing to conspiracy to commit murder and corporate fraud." "I'm confessing to people who won't live to tell the tale," Damien replied, pulling a small revolver from an inside the jacket holster. Agnes screamed and pulled Lily behind the office desk. Edward remained in his chair, fixing his cousin with a defiant stare. "Are you going to kill me right here, in front of a child?" "If necessary." Damien pointed the gun at Edward. "Forrest is on his way with Otis. We'll make it look like a robbery gone wrong. 3 tragic deaths in a home invasion." "4, corrected a small voice from behind the desk. "What?" Damien turned slightly. 4 deaths, Lily repeated, slowly standing up. "You forgot to count me. You little pest! You're the one who ruined everything." "No," Lily said with surprising courage for a 4-year-old. "You're the one who ruined everything because you're a bad person." In that moment of distraction, Evan moved quickly, trying to disarm Damien. The 2 men struggled for the gun, which fired into the ceiling, raining plaster down on everyone. "Run!" Evan shouted, managing to tackle Damien to the floor. But before they could get out of the office, the sound of cars arriving quickly echoed from outside the mansion. Through the windows, they saw 2 dark vehicles park at the main entrance. "Forrest and Otis," Edward murmured. "They're earlier than expected." They were trapped in their own home, with Damien temporarily neutralized but his accomplices fast approaching. The situation had spiraled completely out of control, and now their lives depended on whether they could escape or hide until help arrived. Lily looked out the window and saw the men getting out of the cars, both carrying guns. "Mr. Edward," she said, her voice far too calm for a child, "I think we're going to have to fight." The sound of the doorbell echoed through the mansion with a terrifying normality, contrasting with the chaos that had erupted in the office. Evan kept Damien pinned to the floor, while Edward tried to quickly think of an escape strategy. Agnes held Lily tightly, both of them trembling behind the mahogany desk. "They won't come in shooting," Evan whispered. "They still need it to look like a convincing robbery." "How can you be so sure?" Edward asked, maneuvering his chair to a more protected position. "Because I'm an ex-cop. I know how criminals think." Evan tied Damien's hands with his own tie. "They'll try to enter normally first, pretending they're here for a business meeting." The doorbell rang again, this time more insistently. Then, through the window, They saw Otis circling the house, clearly looking for other entrances, while Forrest remained at the front door, adjusting his jacket as if on a social call. "Damien, are you there?" shouted Forrest's voice from outside. "We're here for the meeting." Lily freed herself from Agnes's arms and crawled to the window, observing the men's movements with her characteristic attention to detail. "The bald man has something on his waist, under his jacket," she reported in a whisper, "and the other one is trying to open the kitchen window." "The kitchen window has a special lock," Agnes said. "He won't get in." "But what about the back door?" Edward asked, suddenly remembering the entrance they rarely used. The silence that followed was the answer they all feared. Agnes turned pale. I forgot to lock it after I took out the trash this morning." "Damn it," Evan muttered. "We need to get out of here, now." "To where?" Edward asked, frustrated by his limited mobility. "The house is surrounded, and I'm in a wheelchair. There's the elevator," Lily remembered. "We can go up to the second floor and get out through the balcony of the front bedroom. There's a strong trellis on the wall." "How do you know about the trellis?" Agnes asked, surprised. "I explored the whole house in the first week. I like to know all the places I can escape from." Lily spoke matter-of-factly, as if it were normal for a 4-year-old to plan escape routes. The sound of breaking glass came from the direction of the kitchen. Otis had found a less secure window. "Let's go," Evan said, pulling Damien to his feet. "He's coming with us as a human shield." "That won't work," Damien moaned. "They have orders to eliminate anyone who knows about the conspiracy, including me, if necessary." "Then you've dug your own grave," Edward replied coldly, heading for the elevator. They all went up together in the spacious elevator that had been adapted for Edward's wheelchair. During the tense seconds of the ascent, they heard heavy footsteps on the floor below and muffled voices talking. "They've discovered we're not in the office anymore," Agnes whispered. They reached the second floor and quickly went to the master bedroom, which overlooked the front of the house. Edward opened the balcony doors, revealing a wrought-iron structure that descended the side wall of the mansion, originally decorative, but strong enough to support human weight. "How am I supposed to get down that in a wheelchair?" he asked, confronting the reality of his physical limitation. "You're not," Lily said simply, "but you can be carried down." Everyone looked at the girl, confused. "Mr. Evan is strong. He can carry Mr. Edward on his back while he climbs down. I saw firefighters do it on TV." "It's too risky," Agnes protested. "Riskier than staying here and waiting to be shot?" Lily asked with irrefutable logic. Voices were approaching in the hallway. The criminals had come upstairs and were systematically checking the rooms. "We have no choice," Evan decided. "Mrs. Stone, you go down first. Then Lily. I'll come with Mr. Edward, and Damien will stay behind to be found by his accomplices." "You can't leave me here." Damien protested, genuine terror in his voice. "You can explain to your friends why the plan went wrong," Edward replied without pity. Agnes, despite her age, climbed down the trellis with surprising agility. Lily followed her like a little monkey. Her skills developed during her 2 months living in the cemetery, helping her move with confidence. "My turn," Edward said. Transferring from his chair to Evan's back with difficulty, the descent was dangerous and slow. Evan was strong, but carrying a grown man on an iron structure required all his strength and concentration. Halfway down, they heard shouts coming from the room. "Where the hell are they?" It was Forrest's voice. "They must have left through the front while I was in the back," Otis answered. "Let's check the garage." When they finally reached the garden, everyone was exhausted but unharmed. Evan's car was parked on the street, but getting to it meant crossing the completely exposed front lawn. "We need a distraction," Evan murmured. "I can do it," Lily offered, but Agnes held her tightly. "No way!" "Then I'll do it," said an unexpected voice. They all turned to see Damien limping toward them, apparently having come down the internal stairs and out the back. "Why aren't you up there?" Evan asked, suspicious. Because when Forrest saw me tied up, he understood that you know everything. Now he wants to eliminate me too. Damien was clearly terrified. I heard him on the phone. He has orders not to leave any living witnesses. And why should we trust you now? Because now my life depends on us getting out of here too. Damien looked at Edward with an expression that mixed desperation and regret. Edward, I know I don't deserve it, but I need your help. After everything you've done, you still have the nerve to ask for help. I'm your cousin, your family. Damien's voice trembled. And I made the biggest mistake of my life. Lily watched the interaction between the two men with her typical sharp perception. Mr. Edward, he's really scared. He's not pretending this time. Just then, the second-floor lights came on and silhouettes appeared in the windows. The criminals had discovered how they had escaped. There they are, Otis shouted, pointing to the garden. Run, Evan ordered, pushing Edward's chair toward the car. What followed was a desperate race across the lawn. Agnes carried Lily, Evan pushed Edward, and Damien limped behind them, constantly looking back. When they reached the car, they heard the sound of the front door being thrown open violently. Get in! Get in! Evan shouted, helping Edward transfer to the back seat while quickly folding the wheelchair into the trunk. The engine roared to life and they sped off, tires screeching on the asphalt. Through the rear-view mirror, they saw Forrest and Otis running to their own cars. They're going to follow us, Damien said, out of breath. Where are we going? Agnes asked, hugging Lily in the back seat. To the police station, Evan answered. Now we have enough witnesses and evidence to arrest everyone involved. No, Lily said suddenly. We can't go to the police station. Why not, dear? Because the bald man was on the phone talking about someone inside. He said, our contact at the station has been alerted. A heavy silence filled the car. If there was corruption in the local police force, going to the station would be like turning themselves in. So, where to? Edward asked. I know a safe place, Evan said. My sister has a farm 50 miles from here. We can hide there while I contact trusted friends at the FBI. As they drove through the dark country roads, pursued by distant headlights that appeared and disappeared around the bends, they all knew they had narrowly escaped a terrible fate. But the question hanging in the air was, how long could they stay safe? And more importantly, who else was involved in the conspiracy against Edward? The mention of a contact at the police station suggested the plot was more extensive than they had imagined, and that even far from the mansion, danger still surrounded them on all sides. Marlene Sterling's farm was hidden among hills covered with eucalyptus trees, accessible only by a dirt road that snaked for 20 minutes through the dense vegetation. When they arrived, it was well past midnight and the property was plunged into complete darkness, broken only by the yellow light from a single window in the main house. Marlene's always a night owl, Evan explained as he parked near the wooden porch. She'll take us in, no questions asked. Evan's sister was a sturdy woman of 55, with hands calloused from decades of working the land. When she saw the motley group getting out of the car, a man in a wheelchair, an elderly housekeeper, a small child, and 2 men who were visibly shaken, she showed no surprise, just opened the door wider. "Trouble, Evan?" she asked, her eyes on Damien, who was clearly limping and had scratches on his face. "The kind that involves gunshots and a car chase," he answered dryly. "We need to stay here for a few days until we sort this out." Marlene nodded and went straight to Lily, kneeling to be at the girl's level. "And who is this little warrior?" "I'm Lily," the girl replied with a tired smile. "And I'm not a warrior. I just have a good memory." "A good memory can be the best weapon sometimes," Marlene said, standing up. "Come on, you all need some hot food and a rest." While Marlene prepared sandwiches in the rustic kitchen, Evan used the farm's landline to contact his old colleagues at the FBI. The conversation was tense and filled with codes that only ex-cops would understand. "Director Moora is on his way," he announced after hanging up. "He's one of the few people I trust completely. He'll be here in 2 hours." "And what about the ones who were chasing us?" Edward asked, positioning his chair near the window to watch the road. "We lost them on the mountain curves, but it shouldn't take them long to find out where we are if they have contacts in the region." Damien sat in a corner, clearly struggling with conflicting emotions. "Edward," he said finally, "I need to tell you something important about the conspiracy." Everyone turned to listen. Lily, who was eating a cheese sandwich, stopped chewing and paid full attention. "The plan wasn't just to steal the company," Damien confessed, his voice thick with regret. "Forrest found out about some government contracts our company could get in the coming years, something worth much more than 40 million. "What kind of contracts?" Evan asked, always attentive to details. "The federal government is going to outsource the coffee supply for public schools and hospitals throughout southern Virginia. The bid hasn't been announced yet, but Forrest has inside information." Damien paused, swallowing hard. "The contract is worth $200 million over 5 years. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Agnes let out a low whistle, while Edward processed the magnitude of what he had just heard. "How did Forrest get this information?" he asked. "He has a brother-in-law who works at the Department of Education. He's the one who leaked the details of the bid." Damien looked directly at Edward. "Our company has the perfect profile to win this contract, but only under new management. The family history, the reputation, the existing infrastructure. That's why they wanted to eliminate me," Edward understood. "It wasn't just personal greed. It was about a $200 million contract." "And there are more people involved," Damien admitted reluctantly. "The Captain Forrest mentioned it's Captain Roger Silver from the Willow Creek Police Department. He's been receiving monthly payments to ensure that any investigation into our activities gets shelved." Lily suddenly stood up and walked to the window. "There are cars coming up the road," she announced calmly. 3 black cars, with their lights off. Evan ran to the window, confirming the girl's observation. "Damn it! How did they find us so fast?" Marlene appeared from the pantry carrying a hunting rifle. "Are we expecting unwanted visitors?" "The dangerous kind," Evan confirmed. "Is there anywhere we can hide?" "There's the cellar of the old house," she said, pointing to a stone structure 50 yards from the main house. "It's where my grandfather used to hide supplies during the war. It has a secret entrance and ventilation." "Take Lily and Mr. Edward there," Evan ordered. "I'll stay here with Marlene to provide cover." "No," Damien said, standing up with difficulty. "I'll stay. It's my responsibility to clean up the mess I made." "You're in no condition to fight," Agnes observed. "But I can serve as a negotiator," Damien replied. "They still need me alive to access certain accounts and company documents." The cars were approaching quickly. Through the window, they could see they were the same vehicles that had chased them from the mansion. "We don't have time for debate," Marlene said pragmatically. "Agnes, take the girl and go to the hideout. Evan, help the man in the chair. You two," she pointed to Damien and her brother, "stay with me." Lily broke free from Agnes's hand and ran to Edward. "Mr. Edward, there's something I need to tell you before we hide." "What is it, dear?" "When Cousin Damien was talking about the big money, I remembered a conversation I heard in the cemetery before that bad afternoon." Lily looked seriously at everyone in the room. There were 2 men talking near the Ashworth family tomb. One of them said, "After Vance disappears, the contract will be ours." And the other replied, "200 million is worth any risk." "Are you absolutely sure what you heard?" Evan asked, interrupting the escape preparations. "Yes, I am, and I recognized one of the voices tonight at our house." Lily pointed at Damien. "It was his." Damien closed his eyes, the last piece of his lie crumbling. How can a 4-year-old have such a detailed memory? "Because," Lily said simply, When you don't have a family and live alone, you have to pay attention to everything to survive. I learned to remember important conversations because sometimes they told me if I was in danger. The sound of car doors slamming echoed from outside. The pursuers had arrived. "It doesn't matter who said what now," Marlene declared, checking the ammunition in her rifle. "What matters is getting out of this alive." "Marlene's right," Evan agreed. "Let's move, now." Agnes scooped Lily into her arms and followed Marlene toward the back door, while Evan pushed Edward's chair over the uneven ground. Damien accompanied them, limping but determined to face the consequences of his actions. The old house was partially hidden by a row of coffee plants and some fruit trees. Marlene knew every stone on the path, guiding the group through the darkness safely. When they reached the stone building, she moved a few seemingly loose planks, revealing a narrow opening that led underground. "It's not luxurious, but it's safe," she said, helping to transfer Edward from his chair into the hideout. The cellar was larger than it looked from the outside, with solid stone walls and a few small openings for ventilation. There were some old pieces of furniture covered with tarps and boxes of stored supplies. "How long can we stay here?" Agnes asked, settling Lily on an improvised mattress. "As long as it takes," Marlene replied. "But we need Forrest and the others to believe you've fled the farm." "How are we going to do that?" Edward asked. "Damien will go out and negotiate with them," Evan explained. "He'll say you escaped by car while he was too injured to follow." "And what if they don't believe him?" Damien asked, clearly nervous. "Then," Lily said with a chilling calm for a child, "you'll have to be a very good actor, because our lives depend on it now." Outside, voices approached the main house. The final confrontation was about to begin, and everything depended on Damien's ability to convince his former accomplices that he had completely failed in his mission. From the dark cellar, the group could hear muffled voices coming from the direction of the main house. Marlene had left the lights and radio on to simulate normal activity, while she strategically positioned herself on the porch with the rifle. The plan was simple. Damien would limp out of the house, pretending to have been abandoned by the others during the escape. "Can you hear me?" Evan whispered, testing the small walkie-talkie he had brought from the car. "Loud and clear," came Marlene's voice through the device. "3 men approaching, Forrest in front, Otis on the left, and a third one I don't recognize." Lily was nestled in Agnes's lap, but her eyes remained alert, catching every sound from above. Edward watched the cellar entrance, ready to defend the group if the plan failed. "Now," Evan murmured into the radio. The house door opened, and Damien appeared on the porch, visibly injured and using one of Marlene's borrowed crutches. His performance had to be perfect. "Forrest, thank God you're here," he shouted, feigning relief. "They abandoned me here." "Where are they?" came Forrest's harsh voice, clearly suspicious. "They fled an hour ago, took another car and headed up the mountain road." Damien came down the steps with apparent difficulty. "When they realized you were coming, they left me here as bait." In the cellar, Agnes held Lily tighter. The girl had tensed up upon hearing the voices, especially Otis's, whom she recognized from the cemetery. "Why should we believe you?" asked a third voice, which none of them recognized. "After the fiasco at the mansion." "Because I'm injured and alone," Damien protested. "Look around. Do you think I'd choose to stay on an isolated farm if I had a choice?" Heavy footsteps approached the house. Through the small ventilation slits, they could see flashlight beams sweeping the grounds. "Search the house," Forrest ordered. "If they were here, there must be signs." "I've already checked everything," said Marlene's voice, seemingly coming out of the house. "There's just the injured man and me. Who are you, and what do you want on my property?" "We are associates of Mr. Vance," Forrest replied diplomatically. "We came to pick him up after an accident." "What kind of accident leaves a man with those marks?" Marlene asked suspiciously. "Looks more like a fight than an accident." In the cellar, Evan smiled slightly. His sister was playing the role of the suspicious but not hostile farmer perfectly. "Ma'am," Otis said impatiently, "we just want to take our friend and leave. We don't want any trouble." "Then take him and get off my land," Marlene replied dryly. Lily whispered something in Agnes's ear, who immediately tensed up. "What is it, dear?" Edward asked in a very low voice. "She said she heard a fourth man," Agnes explained. "Someone moving around the old house." Evan grabbed the radio. "Marlene, are there 4 of you?" The reply took a few seconds. "No, just 3 of us here in front." "We have a problem," Evan murmured. "Someone is coming our way." Edward positioned himself in front of Agnes and Lily, while Evan checked his gun. The sound of cautious footsteps echoed from outside the old house, clearly someone investigating the area. "Is anyone in there?" came an unknown voice, very close to the secret entrance. Everyone held their breath. The opening was partially disguised, but it wouldn't withstand a thorough search. "Captain Silver," the voice said again, "I've found signs of recent movement here. Disturbed earth, fresh tracks." The heart of everyone in the cellar froze. The 4th man was the corrupt captain Damien had mentioned. "Go in," came the order from outside. "If someone is hiding in there, we'll find out." The sound of planks being removed echoed above them. In seconds, the secret entrance would be discovered. "Evan," Edward whispered, "take Lily and get out through that back opening. I'll stay here." "I'm not abandoning anyone," Evan replied firmly. "It's not abandoning. It's saving the child, at least." Lily freed herself from Agnes's arms and went to the small ventilation opening at the back. "I can get out through here," she said. "I'm small enough, and I can distract them." "Absolutely not," Agnes protested. "Listen," Lily said urgently, "if I show up running and screaming outside, they'll think you all escaped and forgot me. They'll follow me and give you time to get away." "It's too dangerous," Edward argued. "More dangerous than all of us being trapped in here." The girl's logic was irrefutable, but no one wanted to put a child at risk. "There's another option," said a new voice from the radio. It was Director Moura, who had arrived silently. "I'm in position with 3 federal agents. We have the farm surrounded." In the cellar, everyone sighed in relief. "Attention," the federal director's voice continued. "All suspects are in our sights. Identify yourselves and drop your weapons." What followed was a confusion of shouts and orders. From the cellar, they heard Forrest trying to argue about legal rights, Otis protesting his innocence, and a heated discussion about arrest warrants. "Captain Silver," said Director Moura's authoritative voice, "you are under arrest for corruption and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." "This is a mistake," the corrupt captain's voice protested. "You don't know who you're dealing with." "We know exactly," Moura replied coldly. "We have recordings, bank transfers, and witnesses. Your scheme is over." Evan cautiously emerged from the cellar, followed by the others. Outside, they saw the flashlights of the federal agents organizing the arrest of the 4 men. Damien was being treated as a cooperating witness, while the others were handcuffed. "How did you know where we were?" Evan asked the director. "We tracked Captain Silver's cell phone," Moura explained. "When we realized he was coming here, outside his jurisdiction, we deduced you were here." "And now?" Edward asked. "Now you will give a full statement about the entire conspiracy, with the evidence we have. Plus your testimony and especially the girls. We're going to dismantle the whole network." Lily approached the federal director with curiosity. "Are you a real policeman, or a fake one like the other guy?" Moura smiled. "A real one, little one. And you're the hero of this story. Without your memory and observation, we never would have uncovered everything." "I'm not a hero," Lily said modestly. "I just pay attention to things." "Sometimes," Agnes said, hugging the girl, "paying attention is the greatest superpower of all." As the criminals were taken into town, the group could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But Edward knew there were still important issues to resolve. His company was in ruins. His relationship with Damien would need to be rebuilt or definitively ended. And most importantly, he had to decide what to do about Lily. The girl who had saved his life deserved more than temporary gratitude. She deserved a real family. And looking at her playing with Agnes under the starry farm sky, Edward began to understand that maybe finding Lily hadn't been a coincidence, but fate offering them all a second chance at happiness. But first, they would have to face the legal and financial consequences of everything that had happened, and find out if it would be possible to rebuild a normal life after so much chaos and betrayal. 3 weeks after the conspirators' arrest, life had taken a completely different turn for everyone. Edward was in the temporary office he had set up at Marlene's farm, trying to rebuild his company from scratch with the help of honest lawyers and accountants. The walls, covered with papers and charts, contrasted with the rustic simplicity of the rural setting. "The damage is extensive, but not irreparable," explained Dr. Robert Andrews, the new accountant hired to replace Forrest. "Damien embezzled approximately $8 million over 2 years, but we've managed to track most of the money." "And Southern Harvest Coffee?" Edward asked, reviewing the financial reports. "It's being dismantled by the FBI. All the fraudulent contracts will be voided, and your original clients have already expressed interest in returning." Robert adjusted his glasses. "The bigger problem is the government contract. With all this mess, I doubt we'll be able to participate in the bid." Lily was sitting on the floor near the table, drawing while listening to the adults' conversation. In recent days, she had shown a growing interest in Mr. Edward's business, asking intelligent questions that surprised the lawyers. "Mr. Edward," she said without looking up from her drawing, "why can't you be in the bid?" "Because our reputation is tarnished by the scandal, dear. The government won't trust a company that's had problems with corruption." "But you didn't do anything wrong. The bad people did." Lily raised her head, her eyes shining with childlike logic. "It's like when someone steals your toy. You don't become a thief just because your toy was stolen." Dr. Andrews smiled. "The girl has an interesting point. Technically, Vance and Son was the victim, not the perpetrator." "But how do we prove that officially?" Edward asked. "Perhaps," suggested a voice from the door, "I can help with that." Everyone turned to see Damien entering the office, accompanied by Agnes. He had lost weight, had deep dark circles under his eyes, and a look of genuine remorse. He was on probation, cooperating with the investigations. "What do you want here?" Edward asked coldly. "I want to fix what I did," Damien replied, approaching hesitantly. "I recorded a full deposition taking full responsibility for the crimes. I make it clear that you knew nothing. And why would you do that?" "Because..." Damien looked at Lily, who was watching him with her typical intensity. "A 4-year-old child has more honor than I've had in 45 years of life." Lily tilted her head, considering his words. "Are you telling the truth now?" "I am, little one, and I apologize for everything you all went through because of me." "I accept your apology," she said simply, "but Mr. Edward is the one who decides whether to trust you again." The girl's wisdom left everyone silent. Edward watched his cousin for a long moment, struggling with conflicting feelings of anger, disappointment, and, surprisingly, pity. "Damien," he said finally, "your deposition might help clear the company's name, but our partnership is over forever." "I understand," Damien replied, nodding sadly. "I just want you to know that my regret is real, and I'll do everything I can to make up for the damage." "How?" Damien pulled an envelope from the briefcase he was carrying. "I've transferred my entire share of the company to you, and I will also testify publicly about the government contract, explaining how we obtained the information." Dr. Andrews took the documents, examining them quickly. This changes everything. With these papers, we can prove that the company has always been upright and that the information about the contract was obtained illegally by third parties. So I can participate in the bid? Edward asked, allowing himself to feel a glimmer of hope. Not only can you, but you have an excellent chance, the accountant confirmed, especially considering the company now has a public record of fighting corruption. Lily stood up and handed her drawing to Edward. It was a depiction of the farm, but with a large new building next to it, clearly a commercial building, with Vance Coffee written on the facade. It's our new company, she explained, bigger and more beautiful than the old one. Near our company? Edward asked, touched by how she automatically included herself. Of course. We're family now, aren't we? The innocent question hit Edward deeply. For the past few weeks, he had avoided thinking about Lily's future, but now he realized he couldn't imagine his life without her anymore. Lily, he said carefully, would you like to be my daughter officially? For real? The girl's eyes widened. Like a real daughter? With papers and everything? With papers and everything. And would Mrs. Agnes be like my grandmother? Agnes, who had been quiet until then, approached with tears in her eyes. I would be the proudest grandmother in the world, she said, kneeling beside Lily. Then yes, the girl exclaimed, jumping into Edward's lap. I want to be your daughter. Dr. Andrews cleared his throat discreetly. I'll need to contact a lawyer specializing in adoption. The process can be complex, considering there's no birth certificate for the girl or family records. We can solve that, Damien said unexpectedly. I know the social worker who handled the case when Lily was found in the cemetery. She can testify about the circumstances and help with the paperwork. Why would you do that? Agnes asked, suspicious. Because it's the right thing to do, Damien replied simply. And because that little girl deserves to have a family that loves her. Just then, the office phone rang. Edward answered, hearing an excited voice on the other end. Mr. Vance, this is George Martin from Premium Coffee. We heard about the whole situation and would like to propose a strategic partnership. What kind of partnership? We're interested in investing in the reconstruction of your company. With our experience in exporting and your product quality, we can create something extraordinary. Edward covered the phone and looked at the group gathered in the office. It's from Premium Coffee. They want to make a partnership proposal. Accept it, Lily shouted excitedly. It'll be good for our company. How can you be so sure? Dr. Andrews asked, amused. Because, she said with unshakable logic, good people want to work with good people, and Mr. Edward is a very good person. Mr. Martin, Edward said into the phone, let's schedule a meeting to discuss the details. After scheduling the meeting, Edward turned to everyone in the room. It looks like our luck has finally turned. It's not luck, Lily corrected, hugging him tightly. It's because we're a real family now, and families take care of each other. Agnes dried her tears with her apron. This child is right. That's what family is. People who choose to stay together through good times and bad. So, Damien said timidly, can I still be a part of it? Not as a partner, but as, family. Edward looked at Lily, who considered the question seriously. He can come for Sunday lunches, she decided, but he has to promise never to lie again. I promise, Damien said, his voice choked with emotion. And you have to help build the new company, with great pleasure. And you have to teach me how to ride a bike. It would be a privilege. As the adults laughed at Lily's list of demands, she snuggled into Edward's lap, finally at peace. She had been through so much suffering and fear, but now she had something she had never imagined possible, a real family that loved her unconditionally. Mr. Edward, Daddy, she said, trying out the new word, can I ask you a question? Of course, my daughter. Do you think my real parents would be happy that I found you? The question touched everyone in the room deeply. Edward hugged Lily tighter. I'm absolutely sure they would, he replied. Parents who love their children want to see them happy and protected. And you are both of those things now. Then everything's okay, Lily concluded, closing her eyes with contentment. Now we can be happy ever after. It was a simple phrase, said with the unshakable faith of a child. But in that moment, amidst the scattered papers of a company being rebuilt and surrounded by people who had chosen each other as family, it felt like the purest truth in the world. 6 months had passed since the night on the farm, and life had taken on a routine no one could have imagined. Edward now worked from home, having transformed one of the rooms in the restored mansion into his new office, while Lily attended the local private school, where she had quickly become one of the teacher's favorite students. Daddy Edward, Lily said, running into the office with her school backpack, the teacher wants to talk to you tomorrow. Did you get into some mischief? He asked, feigning seriousness as he saved the documents for the new partnership with Premium Coffee. No. She said I have exceptional potential and wants to talk about putting me in a more advanced class. Lily climbed into the chair next to the desk. Is that good or bad? It's very good, my smart girl, Edward replied, kissing her forehead. It means you're very clever. I already knew that, she said matter-of-factly, making Edward laugh. Can I help with the work? I promise I won't mess anything up. In recent months, Lily had developed a genuine fascination with the business. She often suggested ideas that, coming from a child, sounded funny but revealed a surprising business logic. You can? I'm reviewing our proposal for the government contract, Edward said, showing her the papers. Remember we talked about supplying coffee to schools and hospitals? The $200 million contract, she said, memorizing numbers with impressive ease. How many companies are competing? 17. Lily frowned, thinking. And what's our advantage over the others? The question caught Edward off guard. Our advantage? Yes. If I were choosing a company to make my food, what would make me choose you and not the others? Edward stopped writing. The girl's simple logic had exposed a fundamental flaw in his strategy. He was focusing on prices and technical specifications, but not on real differentiation. Do you have any suggestions? He asked, genuinely interested. Well, Lily said, taking a blank sheet of paper, what do kids at school like most for breakfast? I don't know, what? When there's something special, like when the cafeteria lady makes homemade cookies to go with the coffee with milk. Lily started drawing as she spoke. What if our company didn't just sell coffee, but the whole experience? What do you mean? Coffee plus special recipes for cookies and cakes to go with it, simple things that schools can make. She showed him the drawing, children smiling around a table with coffee and snacks. Then it wouldn't just be supplying coffee, it would be helping to make breakfast more delicious. Edward fell silent, processing the idea. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of competing only on price, they could offer a complete food experience package. Lily, he said slowly, you just had an idea that could be worth millions. Really? Her eyes sparkled. Can I get a raise in my allowance? You can, Edward laughed, and a promotion to official company consultant. Just then, Agnes appeared at the office door. Mr. Edward, an unexpected visitor has arrived. Who is it? A lady who says she's a social worker. She wants to talk about Lily's adoption. The smile vanished from Edward's face. The adoption process had been ongoing for months, but some bureaucratic complications had arisen related to the absence of Lily's documents. Send her in, he said, trying to hide his concern. The woman who entered was young, perhaps 30, with formal clothes and a thick folder under her arm. Her expression was too serious to be bringing good news. Mr. Vance, I'm Carla Mendez, from the Regional Child Protective Services. I need to talk about the situation of Lily Smith." "Smith?" Lily asked, confused. "Isn't my name Vance now?" "Not officially yet, dear," Edward explained carefully. "Remember we talked about the papers that needed to be signed?" "That's exactly what I came to talk about," the social worker said, sitting down. "A complication has arisen." Edward's heart tightened. What kind of complication? "A family has come forward claiming rights to Lily." The silence in the room was absolute. Lily looked from one adult to another, sensing the tension, but not fully understanding the implications. "What family?" Edward asked, his voice louder than he intended. "Distant relatives on her mother's side. They live in Staunton, and only just found out about Lily's existence through the media coverage of the case. And they want to—" Edward couldn't finish the sentence. "They want to claim custody," Carla confirmed. "They allege that as blood relatives, they have legal priority." Lily shot up from her chair abruptly. "I don't want to go with them. I want to stay here." "Dear, calm down." Agnes tried to soothe her, but the girl was already visibly agitated. "You're my family. They don't know me." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to leave here." "No one said you're leaving," Edward said firmly, hugging her. "We'll fight this." "Mr. Vance," Carla said diplomatically, "I understand your connection with the girl, but the law is clear about the priority of blood relatives. The law is also clear about the best interest of the child," Edward cut in, "and Lily has already declared where she wants to stay. She's only 5 years old. The court may consider that she doesn't have the maturity to make that decision. She has enough maturity to have saved my life," Edward replied, his voice thick with controlled emotion, "and enough to have survived 2 months alone in a cemetery." Carla consulted her papers. "The applicants are Joseph and Mary Smith, owners of a small farm in Staunton. No criminal record, stable financial situation." "And how long did it take them to become interested in their niece?" Agnes asked acidly. "Where were they when she was living among graves?" "According to them, they didn't know the girl existed because of a family rift." "How convenient," Edward muttered. Lily freed herself from the hug and looked directly at Carla. "Can I ask you a question, Mom?" "Of course, dear." "If these relatives knew me before, why did they never come to visit me? Why did they never send me a birthday present? Why did they never ask if I was okay?" The simple, direct question left the social worker without an immediate answer. Sometimes families grow apart because of problems between adults. "But a child isn't to blame for adult problems," Lily cut in with unshakable logic. "And if they really cared about me, they would have looked for me when my parents left." Agnes smiled proudly at the girl's reasoning. "This child has more common sense than many lawyers." "What's the next step?" Edward asked. "There will be a hearing next week," Carla explained. "The judge will hear both sides and make a decision based on Lily's best interest." "And can I speak at the hearing?" Lily asked. "Probably. The judge usually listens to the children's opinions, especially the more articulate ones." "Then I'll tell him I want to stay here, that this is my home and you are my family." Lily looked determinedly at Edward. "And I'll tell him how you saved me and took care of me when no one else cared." After Carla left, leaving a pile of documents to be filled out, a heavy atmosphere descended on the house. The possibility of losing Lily was something none of them had seriously considered. "Daddy, Edward," Lily said that night at dinner, "do you think the judge will send me away?" "I won't let that happen," he promised. "No way." "And what if he does anyway?" The question hit Edward like a punch. Then we'll find a way for you to come back." "No," Lily said with a seriousness that didn't match her age. "If the judge orders it, I'll go. But you will always be my real family in my heart." The girl's emotional maturity moved everyone. Agnes discreetly wiped away her tears, while Edward struggled to maintain his composure. "Lily," he said finally, "regardless of what happens, I want you to know that you've changed our lives for the better, and that we will never forget you." "I won't forget either," she replied. "You taught me that family isn't just who you're born with, it's who you choose to be with." That night, while Lily slept, Edward stayed awake planning legal strategies, preparing arguments, and gathering evidence that he would be the best guardian for her. Because losing that extraordinary girl was not an option he was willing to consider. The week leading up to the hearing was one of the most tense the house had ever experienced. Edward had hired the best family law attorney in the region, Amanda Rogers, who was meticulously preparing the case. Lily, for her part, showed a surprising calm, as if she had accepted that some aspects of life were beyond her control. "Ms. Rogers," Lily said during one of the prep meetings, "can I ask something?" "Of course, dear." "If my relatives really wish me well, why don't they try to get to know me first? Why didn't they come here to talk to me?" The lawyer paused, considering the question. "That is a very insightful observation. Generally, when there's a genuine interest in the child's well-being, relatives seek a gradual approach. So they just want to win in court, not get to know me," Lily concluded with relentless logic. "It seems that way," Amanda agreed, taking notes. "I'll use that argument at the hearing." The day before the trial, something unexpected happened. Agnes was preparing lunch when the doorbell rang. At the door, she found a middle-aged couple, a thin man in a straw hat and a stout woman in a simple dress. "Ma'am, we're Joseph and Mary Smith," the man said. "We've come to see our niece." Agnes stared at them coldly. "You should have made an appointment." "Please, we just want to meet the girl," Mary insisted. "We're her family." "Family that showed up after all the hard work was done," Agnes retorted, but she opened the door. "Come in." Lily was in the living room playing with a jigsaw puzzle when the couple entered. She looked up and studied them with her characteristic intensity, as if cataloguing every detail. "Hi, Lily," Mary said with a forced smile. "We're your aunt and uncle. I'm Mary, and this is Joseph." "Hi," Lily replied politely but without enthusiasm. "Did you come to get me?" "We came to meet you," Joseph said, approaching. "You look a lot like your mother when she was little." "You knew my mother." "We were cousins," Mary explained. "We hadn't spoken in years because of family misunderstandings." "What kind of misunderstandings?" Lily asked, her natural curiosity overriding her caution. Joseph and Mary exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Grown-up stuff," Mary said vaguely. "If it was grown-up stuff, why didn't you come to see me after my parents left?" Lily's question was direct and blunt. "We didn't know where you were," Joseph tried to justify. "But you knew I existed." "Well, yes. Then you could have looked." Lily returned her attention to the puzzle. "People who care, look." Agnes watched the interaction from the kitchen, impressed by the girl's maturity. Lily was conducting a real interrogation, exposing the flaws in her relative's story with simple but devastating questions. "Lily," Mary said, trying a more affectionate tone, "we know it's been hard for you. We want to give you a real family." "I already have a real family," Lily replied without hesitation. "Daddy Edward, Grandma Agnes, and even Uncle Damien, who comes on Sundays." "But they're not your blood family," Joseph argued. "And you are?" Lily looked up from the puzzle. "If you're blood family, why don't you know that I like to draw birds? Why don't you know that I'm afraid of thunder? Why don't you know that I eat shortbread cookies for breakfast?" The couple fell silent, clearly without an answer to such specific questions. "Real family," Lily continued, "knows these things because they live together, care together, love together." She pointed to the kitchen where Agnes was preparing lunch. "Grandma Agnes knows I like carrots, but I don't like squash. She knows I sleep better with the hallway light on. She knows that when I'm sad, I like to sit on her lap." Mary tried another approach. We can learn these things. We can give you a good life on the farm, with animals, with space to play. I already have a good life here, Lily said simply, and I don't want to change. At that moment, Edward came home for lunch and found the tense situation in the living room. What's going on here? Mr. Vance, Joseph said, standing up, we came to meet our niece before the hearing. Without notice, without permission, without considering that this could be traumatic for her, Edward observed coldly, positioning his chair protectively next to Lily. We have a right to see her, Mary insisted. A legal right, perhaps. A moral right. Edward looked at the couple with barely disguised contempt. Where was this right when she was alone in the cemetery? Where was this love from relatives when she needed it? We didn't know. Lies, Lily cut in unexpectedly. You did know. Everyone turned to her, surprised by the assertion. How do you know that, dear? Edward asked. Because when I lived in the cemetery, I heard a conversation between the lady at the bar and another woman. They talked about an orphan girl who had relatives in Staunton, but the relatives didn't want anything to do with her because they didn't have money to raise another child. The silence that followed was deafening. Joseph and Mary turned visibly pale. You said that? Edward asked, his voice dangerously low. It was a difficult time, Mary stammered. We couldn't afford. But you can now, Lily asked, her voice filled with a mature sadness. What changed? Oh, right. Now you know that Daddy Edward has money and can pay child support. The accusation hit the couple like a gunshot. Joseph stood up abruptly. That's not true. Then why did you only show up after the story was in the newspaper? Lily insisted. Why didn't you look for me when I was alone and in need? Mary started to cry, but Lily showed no compassion. People who love you don't abandon you and then come back only when it's convenient. I think you should leave, Edward said. You've done enough damage. This isn't over, Joseph threatened. We have rights. And I have a family that loves me, Lily retorted, climbing into Edward's lap. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell the judge the whole truth. After the couple left, a heavy atmosphere descended on the house. Lily remained in Edward's lap, processing the visit. Daddy Edward, she said finally, did they come here to scare me? They probably came to try and convince you, Edward answered honestly. It didn't work. Lily looked up at him. Do you know why? Why? Because real family doesn't need to convince anyone. It shows itself every day, in the small gestures, in the hugs, in the scolding when needed, in the food made with love. She pointed to Agnes. Grandma Agnes never told me I'm your family. She showed me by making my breakfast every day. And Daddy? Edward asked, moved. Daddy showed me when he changed his whole life to give me a home, when he installed a ramp in my room so my wheelchair could get up, when he taught me to read the company numbers. Lily smiled. A real family is built every day. It's not claimed in a courtroom. Agnes approached, drying her tears. This girl is wiser than many adults. Tomorrow, Lily said with determination, I'm going to tell the judge all of this. And if he doesn't understand, that's his problem. I know where I belong. That night, Edward lay awake thinking about the girl's words. She was right. Family is built every day, in small but significant gestures, and they had built something solid and true together. Regardless of what happened at the hearing, nothing could change the love they felt for each other. But still, he prayed that justice would recognize the obvious, that Lily was already exactly where she needed to be. The day of the hearing dawned rainy, with dark clouds that seemed to mirror the tension gripping everyone. Lily woke up earlier than usual and found Edward already dressed in his most formal suit, reviewing documents for the last time. Daddy Edward, she said, climbing onto his chair. Are you nervous? A little, he admitted, hugging her. And you? No, because I know I'm going to tell the truth. And the truth is always stronger than lies. Lily was wearing her favorite blue dress, the one Agnes had bought for her first day of school. "Can I bring my drawing to show the judge?" "What drawing?" Lily ran to her room and came back with a carefully folded sheet of paper. When she opened it, it revealed a drawing of the family. Her, Edward, Agnes, and even Damien, all smiling in front of the mansion. But what stood out were the details. Each person was doing something specific that represented their role in the family. "Look, I drew Grandma Agnes cooking, you working, me studying, and Uncle Damien helping in the garden." She pointed to each figure. "And down here I wrote, my real family." "It's perfect," Edward said, moved. "I'm sure the judge will understand." In the courtroom, the room was full. Besides Edward's family, Joseph and Mary Smith were present with their lawyer, representatives from Child Protective Services, and several people who had followed the case through the press. Lily observed everything with curiosity, showing no fear. Judge Ferdinand Mason was a man in his 60s, known for his wisdom and for always prioritizing the well-being of children. When he entered the room, everyone stood respectfully. "Good morning," he said, taking his seat. "We are here today to decide on the custody of the minor, Lily Smith. Before hearing the arguments from the parties, I would like to speak with the child herself." Lily was led to a small table near the judge, where paper and colored pencils were available. "Hi, Lily," the judge said in a gentle voice. "My name is Ferdinand. Do you know why we're here?" "Yes, I do. You're going to decide where I should live." Lily spoke clearly, without intimidation. "Can I say what I think?" "Of course, that's exactly why you're here." "Well," Lily straightened up in her chair, "I lived alone in the cemetery for 2 months after my parents left. During that time, nobody looked for me. No uncle, no relative, no one from my family." The judge took notes as she spoke. "Then one day I saw a man being attacked and I called for help. That man brought me to his home and has taken care of me ever since. He gave me food, clothes, school, a doctor, and most importantly, love." Lily looked at Edward. "There's also Grandma Agnes, who teaches me to cook and tells me stories before bed." "And what do you feel for these people?" the judge asked. "I feel like they're my real family, not because we were born together, but because we chose to be together and take care of each other." "And what about your aunt and uncle who are here today?" Lily looked at Joseph and Mary, who avoided her gaze. "They only showed up after the story was in the newspaper. Yesterday, they came to the house and wanted to convince me to go with them, but they didn't know anything about me. They didn't know I like to draw. They didn't know I'm afraid of thunder. They didn't even know I eat shortbread cookies for breakfast." "And is that important to you?" "Very important. Real family knows these things because they live together every day." Lily picked up her drawing. "I drew my family. Do you want to see?" The judge examined the drawing carefully, noting the details and the affection with which each person had been portrayed. "It's a very beautiful drawing," he said. "Do you feel safe and happy with Mr. Vance?" "Yes, I do. He takes care of me just like a real daddy does. And when I had nightmares at the beginning, he would stay up with me until I could fall asleep." "And what if I decide you should go live with your aunt and uncle?" Lily thought for a moment before answering. "I'll obey because you're the judge, but in my heart, my real family will always be Daddy Edward and Grandma Agnes, and I'll miss them very much every day." The judge nodded gravely. "Thank you, Lily. Now I will hear the adults." Amanda Rogers stood up to present Edward's case. She had prepared a meticulous defense, including psychological evaluations, school reports, and testimonies from people who witnessed Lily's transformation since she was taken in. "Your Honor," she said, "Mr. Edward Vance not only saved this child's life, but offered her opportunities she would never have had under other circumstances. Lily is enrolled in an excellent school, has regular medical and psychological follow-up, and most importantly, is part of a family that loves her unconditionally. The Smith's lawyer tried to counter-argue. The law is clear on the priority of blood relatives. My clients are legitimate relatives and are able to raise the girl. Where were these relatives when she needed them most? Amanda retorted. The child spent 2 months in a situation of total abandonment, and they didn't lift a finger to help. We didn't know about her situation, the lawyer protested. Yes, you did, Lily intervened from her table, surprising everyone. Sorry, Your Honor, but can I speak? The judge nodded positively. When I lived in the cemetery, I heard the lady at the bar say that I had relatives in Staunton, but that they didn't want to take me in because they didn't have money. They only changed their minds after they found out Daddy Edward is rich. A murmur went through the room. Joseph and Mary turned red with embarrassment. Is this true? The judge asked the couple directly. Mary started to cry. We really couldn't afford it at the time. But you can now? The judge insisted. We thought, if she came to live with us, Mr. Vance could help financially. Joseph admitted reluctantly. The confession caused an uproar in the room. The judge banged his gavel, calling for silence. So you want the child? Expecting the current guardian to pay child support? The judge asked, clearly displeased. It's not quite like that. The Smith's lawyer tried to justify. It's exactly like that, Lily said firmly. They don't want me because they love me. They want me for the money. The judge addressed the Smith couple directly. Do you confirm that you knew of the child's existence but chose not to help when she was in need? Yes, sir, Mary mumbled, unable to lie in the face of the evidence. And now you want custody expecting financial benefit? Joseph tried to protest, but the judge cut him off with a gesture. I've heard enough. The judge turned to Lily. Dear, is there anything else you would like to tell me? Just one thing, Lily said, standing up. I know I'm little and that adults sometimes think kids don't understand things, but I do. I know that family isn't about having the same blood. It's about choosing to care, protect, and love every day. She pointed at Edward. Daddy Edward chose me when I was alone and scared. Grandma Agnes chose me when she taught me how to make cookies. They choose me every day when they wake up worrying if I'm okay, if I'm happy, if I'm learning. Then she looked at Joseph and Mary. You didn't choose me when I needed you. You only came now because you think you'll get something out of it. That's not family, it's business. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the lawyers seemed moved by the girl's speech. Your Honor, Lily concluded, if you decide I should go with them, I will. But I will never stop loving my real family, and I will never call them aunt and uncle, because a real family doesn't need a title. It proves itself with actions. The judge remained silent for a few minutes, clearly impressed by the child's maturity and articulation. Judge Ferdinand Mason remained silent for long minutes, flipping through documents and carefully observing every person in the room. Finally, he addressed the Smith couple. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, he said in a grave voice, after hearing all the testimony and reviewing the evidence, I need to make a few points about your case. The couple looked at each other nervously. First, you admitted to knowing of the child's existence, but chose not to intervene when she was in a state of total abandonment. Second, you sought custody only after discovering she was being cared for by a wealthy family. Third, your motivations appear to be more financial than emotional. Joseph tried to protest. Your Honor, we truly want what's best for the girl. Silence. The judge cut in firmly. I am not finished. He turned to Edward. Mr. Vance, you took in a child in a situation of extreme vulnerability, provided her with medical care, a quality education, emotional stability, and most importantly, unconditional love. Lily held tightly to Agnes's hand, her eyes fixed on the judge. Furthermore, the magistrate continued, It is evident that a genuine and healthy emotional bond exists between the child and her current family. Lily demonstrates exceptional emotional maturity and the ability to clearly articulate her feelings and needs. The judge paused, looking directly at Lily. "Dear, you have impressed everyone here today with your wisdom and courage. Few children can express their feelings so clearly and maturely." "Thank you, Your Honor," Lily replied politely. "In light of all the facts presented," the judge said solemnly, "and always considering the best interest of the child, which is the supreme principle in cases like this, I grant the adoption petition in favor of Mr. Edward Vance." The room erupted in murmurs. Agnes began to cry with relief, while Edward felt an indescribable emotion swell in his chest. Lily remained calm, as if she had always known what the outcome would be. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I order that the Smith couple be investigated for child neglect and attempted extortion, as their true motivations became clear during this hearing." Joseph and Mary rose abruptly protesting, but were restrained by the bailiff. "Your Honor," Joseph said desperately, "this isn't fair. She's our blood niece." "Sir," the judge replied firmly, "blood kinship, without love, care and responsibility, is nothing more than a biological coincidence. Family is built on daily dedication, not claimed out of convenience." Lily let go of Agnes's hand and approached the Smith couple. "Uncle Joseph, Aunt Mary," she said in a gentle voice, "I'm not mad at you. I'm just sad that you missed the chance to really know me." The girl's maturity moved everyone. Mary began to cry harder. "If one day you want to really know me, without wanting anything in return, you can visit," Lily continued, "but as visitors, not as owners." The couple left the room in silence, crestfallen and visibly shaken by the decision and the girl's words. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, "the adoption papers will be finalized in the coming days. As of today, Lily is officially your daughter." "Daddy Edward," Lily shouted, running to hug him. "Now it's official. I'm your real daughter." "You always were, my little one," he replied, holding her tightly. "You always were." Amanda approached with the final documents. "Congratulations. This was one of the most moving cases I've ever been a part of." "Ms. Rogers," Lily said, "thank you for helping me stay with my family." "Thank you for showing me what a real family means," the lawyer replied, emotional. As they left the courthouse, they were greeted by a small crowd that had followed the case in the press. Reporters wanted interviews, but Edward politely declined. "Today is a day for family," he said simply. In the car, on the way back home, Lily was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking, my daughter?" Edward asked. "I'm thinking that now I can really call our house my home," she said, "and that I'll never have to be afraid of someone taking me away again." "Never again," Agnes confirmed from the front seat. "We're a family forever now." "Grandma Agnes," Lily said, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, dear." "Are you happy that I'm officially your granddaughter now?" "I'm happier than I can put into words," Agnes replied, drying her tears. "I always wanted a granddaughter, and I got the most special one in the world." And I got the best grandma in the world," Lily said, "who knows how to make shortbread cookies and tells the best stories." When they arrived home, a surprise was waiting for them. Damien was on the porch with a chocolate cake and balloons, accompanied by Marlene and Evan. "Surprise!" they all shouted as Lily got out of the car. "An adoption party!" she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "I've never had a party just for me." "Now you'll have a party every year on this day," Damien promised, "to celebrate the day our family became complete." During the party, Lily circulated among everyone with the contagious joy of a truly happy child. At one point she approached Edward with a serious expression. "Daddy, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "That night in the cemetery, when I saw you being attacked, I almost didn't say anything," she confessed. "I thought about hiding because I was scared." "Why didn't you hide?" Because I remembered my mom saying that we should always help when someone is in danger, even if we're scared. Lily smiled. If I hadn't helped, I never would have met you all. And we never would have met you, Edward said, hugging her. Sometimes one brave person changes everyone's life. I wasn't brave. I just did what was right. That's what courage is, my daughter. Later, when everyone had gone home and Lily was asleep, Edward and Agnes were talking on the porch. "Mr. Edward," Agnes said, "can I confess something?" "Of course. At first, when you brought Lily home, I thought you were making a mistake. I thought it was too complicated, too risky." She paused. "I have never been so happy to be wrong." "She saved our lives in ways we couldn't even imagine," Edward agreed. "She gave me a purpose I had lost years ago. And she gave me the chance to be a mother again, even at 68. "Agnes," Edward said, "I want you to know I'm including you as Lily's official grandmother in the documents too." "Really?" Agnes's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Family is chosen, remember? And Lily chose you as her grandmother. I choose you as part of our family too." That night, for the first time in months, Edward slept soundly without any worries. His daughter was safe, his family was complete, and the future seemed promising. In the room next door, Lily slept, hugging the teddy bear Agnes had given her on the first day. In her dreams, she flew with colorful birds over a yellow house where people who loved each other lived happily ever after. This was exactly how true family stories should end, with love, security, and the promise that no matter what, they would always have each other. 2 years passed since the day of the hearing that forever changed the Vance family's life. The mansion had been completely transformed, where solemn silence once reigned, laughter, lively conversations, and the constant sound of a child exploring every corner of her true home now echoed. Lily, now 7, had developed into a bright and confident girl. Her exceptional memory, combined with the quality education she received, had made her one of the top students in her class. More importantly, she had become a genuinely happy child, secure in the unconditional love that surrounded her. "Daddy Edward!" she shouted, running into the office on a Saturday morning. A very important letter arrived. Edward was reviewing company contracts. The business had not only fully recovered from the crisis, but had become one of the most respected in the industry. The partnership with Premium Coffee had been an extraordinary success, and the government contract had been renewed for another 5 years. "What letter is it, my daughter?" he asked, looking at the official envelope she held. "It's from the government, with a big seal and everything." Lily handed him the envelope ceremoniously. "I think it's about our company." Edward carefully opened the mail, his eyes widening as he read. Agnes appeared at the door, curious about the excitement. "What is it, Mr. Edward?" It's a letter from the Department of Agriculture," he said, still in disbelief. "We've been chosen as the Social Responsibility Company of the Year." "What does that mean?" Lily asked, climbing onto her chair. "It means they've recognized the work we do, not just with coffee, but also with people in the community." Edward showed her the letter. "We're going to receive an award in Washington, D.C. "In D.C., the capital?" Lily's eyes sparkled. "Can I come too?" "Of course you can. The whole family is going." Agnes wiped away tears of emotion. "Mr. Edward, this is wonderful. All the suffering was worth it." "Grandma Agnes," Lily said, "he didn't suffer. We grew together." The girl's wisdom continued to surprise the adults. At 7, she had developed a mature perspective on life, but without losing the innocence and joy of childhood. That afternoon, during the Sunday lunch that had become a family tradition, Damien arrived with news of his own. "Edward, Lily, Agnes," he said, visibly emotional. "I want to share something important with you." "What is it, Uncle Damien?" asked Lily, who had developed a genuine affection for Edward's cousin over the years. "I met someone special, a teacher named Clara, who works at a school for underprivileged children," Damien smiled shyly. "We're getting married next month." "That's great, Uncle Damien," Lily exclaimed, clapping. "Is she nice?" "Very nice. And she's eager to meet you all." Damien looked at Edward. "Cousin, I know I made terrible mistakes in the past, but these 2 years with you have taught me the true value of family. I hope you'll accept Clara as part of ours." "Family is chosen," Lily said, repeating the phrase that had become a mantra in the house. "If she makes you happy and is a good person, then she's our family too." Edward smiled, touched by his daughter's generosity. "Lily is right. We can't wait to meet her." During the award ceremony in Washington, D.C., 2 weeks later, Lily was impressed by the solemnity of the event. Wearing a new dress bought especially for the occasion, she observed everything with her characteristic attention to detail. "Mr. Edward Vance," the secretary announced, "for excellence in socially responsible business practices and for the positive transformation your company has promoted in the Willow Creek community." One day, when Edward went on stage to receive the award, he dedicated the honor to "my daughter Lily, who taught me that the best investments are those made in people's hearts." Lily blushed with emotion, receiving applause from the entire audience. Later, at the hotel, she snuggled next to Edward on the balcony overlooking the illuminated city. "Daddy," she said, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, my daughter." "Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out this was all a dream." Lily looked at him seriously. "That I'm still in the cemetery, alone and cold." Edward's heart ached. "Lily, that will never happen again. You're safe with us forever." "I know, but sometimes your mind invents silly fears." She smiled. "Then I remember that a real family leaves marks that can't be dreamed." "What kind of marks?" "Like the smell of Grandma Agnes's cookies that stays in the kitchen, like the sound of your wheelchair in the hallway in the morning, like the feeling of being loved even when I misbehave." Lily laughed. "Dreams don't have all those details." The next day, on the flight back home, Lily announced a decision that surprised everyone. "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to work at our company." "Really? And what would you like to do?" "I want to take care of the part that helps people, create programs for children who are alone like I was." Lily looked out the plane window. "Every child deserves to have a family that chooses them." "That's a beautiful dream," Agnes said, moved. "It's not a dream, it's a plan," Lily corrected with determination. "I'm going to study hard to help other children find real families." 6 months later, on a sunny spring morning, the Vance family gathered for a special celebration. It was the 3rd anniversary of Lily's adoption, a date that had become the official family day of the house. "Daddy Edward," said Lily, now 8 and even more articulate, "can I make a speech?" "Of course, my official orator." Lily stood up, holding a piece of paper where she had jotted down her thoughts. "When I was little and lived in the cemetery, I thought family was just something that happened to other people. I thought I was too different, that there was something wrong with me." She paused, looking at each person present. "Then I met you all and learned that family isn't about being the same. It's about choosing to love each other, even when you're different." Damien and Clara, who had married in an intimate ceremony 2 months prior, watched emotionally. "Daddy Edward taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are. Grandma Agnes taught me that love is shown in small acts of care every day. Uncle Damien taught me that people can change when they really want to. And Aunt Clara," she smiled at the newest family member, "is teaching me that there's always room for more love in a family." Everyone in the room was visibly moved. "So," Lily concluded, "I want to thank you for choosing me, and I want to promise that I will choose you every day forever." When she finished, they all stood up to embrace her in a big family circle. "Lily," Edward said in a choked voice, "thank you for choosing us too. You transformed our house into a real family." That night, after everyone had gone home and Lily was asleep, Edward stood on the porch watching the stars. Agnes joined him with 2 cups of coffee. "Mr. Edward," she said, "have you ever imagined what our lives would be like if that day at the cemetery hadn't happened?" "I have," he replied. "I'd still be a bitter man, focused only on work. You'd still be taking care of an empty house. And Lily—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "You don't have to imagine," Agnes said gently. "What matters is that it happened, and it happened because a brave little girl decided to help a stranger in danger. And because that stranger decided to return the kindness. And because I decided I had more than enough love to share with a special child." They stood in contemplative silence for a few minutes. "Agnes," Edward said finally, "thank you for embarking on this crazy journey with me." "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a grandmother," she replied. "Lily gave me back a purpose I thought I had lost forever." Upstairs, Lily slept peacefully in her room, decorated with drawings of colourful birds, no longer the sad black birds she drew in the cemetery, but happy birds flying freely in a limitless blue sky. In her dreams, she flew with them, but she always returned to the yellow house, where her family awaited her with love, smiles, and the certainty that, no matter what happened, they would always have each other. And so, a story that began with suffering and fear had become a narrative of hope, love, and proof that the strongest families are those built not by chance, but by deliberate choice and unconditional love. Little Lily, who had once lived alone among graves, now slept safely in a house full of life, love, and infinite possibilities. She had found her real family, and they had found in her the best of themselves. This is exactly how all stories of family love should end, with the promise that true love once found lasts forever. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a score from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.